You are no doubt familiar with this book because I made a video on it, and in a previous video I showed you how an author used the power of three to structure this book. And this is a no small book. We're talking about 3 volumes, approximately 1500 pages. And my point was that using the power of 3, if this author could write 1500 pages, then writing 1500 words or 10 pages or something like that is going to be super easy if you use my methods. Now in this video, I'll show you how this exact author used the power of dualities to keep coming up with ideas. So let's take a look again at the frontispiece of this book. In the previous video, and I'll post the link below, I showed you that essentially he used 3 partitions to structure this book. So that's the power of 3 right there. But there's another way he used the power of 3, and let me show you how right here, because he cut it up philosophically, medicinally, and historically. You see, he says open and cut up. Philosophically, medicinally, historically, opened and cut up. That's the power of 3 again, something that I did not mention in the previous video. Very interesting, right? But we're talking about the power of dualities in this video. So let's take a look at how this author used those. Now this is the synopsis of the first partition, essentially the outline of the first partition. And let's just go through all the dualities. Let me go through them. Not all of them, but many of them, because there are so many. He uses them here in essentially in every section and subsection of his book. But let me show you some of the big and obvious ones. Okay, look, he says of the body or of the head. You see the body versus the head. Now, body and head are not necessarily opposites. It's just a duality, body, mind. You see, it says of the head or mind. You're no doubt familiar with the expression body, mind, medicine. Why? Because it's the kind of medicine that uses body and mind, or the synergy between the body and the mind. So it is a duality. These are not necessarily opposites. These are more complementaries. Moving on. Look, body have parts, right? And soul and its faculties. Again, we're dealing with body and soul. Now, body and soul are, again, not necessarily opposites, unless in some religions they could be opposites. The religion could say, oh, no, the body, forget the body, just take care of the soul, something like that. These concepts, body and soul, then become opposites. But really they're complementaries, body and soul, but he uses them here as a duality. The author uses them here as a duality. Now within this little duality, there's another duality, contained or containing. Now something contained in something, like something is in a box, or something containing something, like something contains something in it, like a box. That's a duality as well. Moving on. Supernatural or natural. Obvious duality, and these are pretty much opposites. Supernatural is kind of opposite to natural, because supernatural is something that is non-physical, and something that is natural is physical. Next, see, congenit inward or outward. Again, inward and outward, these are dualities, and you can say these are opposites as well, because something is inside and something is outside. A duality of opposites. Next, look how this duality of inward and outward is repeated. Again, inward and outward, and again, inward and outward. This is a very, very good lesson. If you have found a good way to subdivide any of your sections, you can use it and reuse it to divide any of the other sections, and just the way this author is doing here. You see? You don't have to necessarily stick to one kind of duality because for the fear of being repetitious in another section. No, you won't be repetitious because you're talking about something else in another subsection, but you're simply dividing it into 2 parts, just like you did in the previous section. It's going to be a completely different section, different content, but structured this way, structured in terms of dualities, inward or outward, inward or outward, inward or outward. Next, quality versus quantity. Now this is a duality, not necessarily opposites, more like complementaries, but definitely a duality. Quality versus quantity. We usually think of quality and quantity as competing against each other. It's either quantity or quality. It doesn't necessarily have to be that way, but again, it is definitely a duality. Again, body or mind. And one more time, body or mind, and one more time, in body or in mind. So again, in body or in mind, repeated 3 times. You see, again, he does exactly the same thing. The content is going to be different, but it's going to be structured this way in terms of dualities. He uses it. He uses the power of duality to help him structure his argument. Next, this is a synopsis of the second partition, and we'll go straight to duality: general or particular. Particular meaning specific. So again, it's general versus specific. It's definitely a duality, but pretty much also a duality of opposites, because general is pretty much opposite to particular or specific. Next, unlawful versus lawful. Again, another duality, and of course a duality of opposites. Next, from himself or from his friends. Now, there is me in this world and there is other people, right? Or there are other people. So it's you and others. A duality where I live in a world in which there is me, I exist, and then exists everyone else. It's a duality again. It is just an intellectual duality. It's not necessarily spiritual or philosophical in any way. It is just a way to intellectually structure an argument. Again, he's thinking, okay, so how could I subdivide this? Well, I'm going to subdivide it into talking about myself or himself and his friends in terms of the same things. Another duality. Liquid or solid. Obvious duality of pretty much opposites. Ice is solid, water is liquid. Very different qualities of the same matter. A duality of opposites. Hot or cold. Obvious opposites. Hot or cold. Next, simples versus compounds. Simples are what? If something is simple, it involves or it contains only one or two very few parts. If it's a compound, it contains many parts. So it's few versus many parts. Simple versus complex. Definite duality. Next, inwardly taken or outwardly used. We're obviously in a section about cures, so you can take something inwardly or you can take something outwardly, or topically, the way we use it today, the way we use the word today. Simples or compounds, again, you see, so it shows up again. This does not mean, again, I'm just emphasizing this does not mean that the author is going to be repeating himself. No, it's simply a way for him to structure his content. The content, I assure you, is going to be completely different from the way we saw simples and compounds before, because he's simply taking different content and he's applying this structure to divide it. Synopsis of the third partition. Again, simple versus mixed. You see, simple, which has three objects, mixed of all three. So simple versus mixed, or simple versus compound again. Next, body or mind. It shows up again. Again and again. This shows you how this author, and this is a brilliant book, once this author has recognized, this is a wonderful duality that really has worked for me in a previous section, so why not use it again in this section? Brilliant. Bad or good, an obvious duality of opposites. Next, improper or proper, duality of opposites. In the parties themselves or others, it shows up again. If you remember, myself versus my friends or other people. There's me and there's other people. There are parties themselves and there are others, and a definite duality. Another one, general or particular. Again, general or specific. You see, once he has discovered a wonderful duality, he's going to use it again and again, because we've seen it before already 1 or 2 times. So here are your takeaways from this video. Great power lies in dividing your content into logical parts. Great power lies in it, because it helps you not only to organize your ideas, but also come up with new ideas. Use dualities. These are simple pairs of opposing or complementary concepts, just like you saw in this video. Simple pairs of opposing or complementary concepts. Now, opposing concepts would be something like bad versus good. Complementary concepts would be something like body and mind. Again, very important, dualities are not just about organizing content that already exists in your head. If you already have content, you're thinking, okay, I'm just gonna use dualities when I actually have the content, when I actually have something to organize, then I'll organize it this way. No, dualities actually help you produce ideas. Get an idea and try to turn it into a duality. Divide it into 2, divide it into dualities, and see how many things, how many detailed ideas will be produced as a result of you using the power of dualities.